All right, folks, friends who ramble, we are back. It has been 2 weeks since our last episode, but we are back for the monthly, quarterly report, the power rankings. I guess this would be 2.0 at this point in the season. So we have Amaral back. It feels like he's kind of becoming a permanent second chair for the power rankings. And then we're bringing in the number one seed right now, Nick Wallace. We'll start with you, Wallace. It's good to have you back. Always good to have you on the show. And we'll get into the standings in a little bit. But how are you feeling right now overall?
I'm feeling pretty good, man. Despite the three-game skid, probably would have felt a little bit better if you asked me a couple weeks ago, but I think the team is still trending the right direction despite the recent results and feeling fortunate to be in a points for league where I think I'm right there next to Pete at the top. So we're hanging in there. I think we'll be just fine.
On the bright side, you can use Tyreek again. So like that must feel amazing.
Yes, that feels pretty great. Wish Calvin Ridley didn't suck. We're getting our dearest Nico back within the next couple weeks, so we're on the up and up. But yeah, that was a really tough couple of week stretch to have the Waddle Tyreek stack as like the staple of the wide receiver room. But we made it through that for the most part. We still put up decent points. That's really all you can ask for.
Yeah, well said. Amaral, how are you feeling?
Ah, well, listen, if I wasn't just a fucking moron, I'd be all right. Like last week, I would have won if I just like played Keon Coleman and Tyrone Tracy. So I just gotta let the rookies do their thing, man. I gotta get them into the lineup. Um,
Yeah, I was actually shocked. I mean, when Tyrone Tracy broke off, I think it was like a 45-yard touchdown run. Like my first reaction was to open up the app and see how many points he was at, and I was like stunned to see that he wasn't in your starting lineup.
I just like didn't fully trust that they were gonna make the right decision. Like so, whenever like a rookie has a big game. I'm always a bit hesitant. I'm like, how is the head coach going to approach the situation? Like, are they going to be an asshole and keep the guy on the bench even though he proved himself, or are they going to like let him just ball out and do his thing? Because he's like clearly more explosive than Singletary. Like that's like obvious. Um, so I just didn't fully trust the Giants, but like in a way, I'm kind of happy it happened that way because like now there's no denying it. Like Dayball can't keep him off the field.
Yeah, and that was I totally agree with that too because especially they brought in Singletary because of his familiarity with Dayball, and it does feel like Dayball's definitely on the hot seat. So I feel like that would be like the number one thing he would do is lean on one of his day one guys and not a rookie, and especially this early in the year too. It is kind of like a rookie in his first, second, or third primetime game. It's like he's kind of getting used to that stuff too. You never know how they get adjusted to that schedule and everything, but. Yeah, I mean, he went off, what was it, 140, 150 yards on the ground. I had him 25 plus receiving yards. The guy's a former receiver. I think he had 5 receiving yards and he had like 150
Yeah.
scrimmage yards. So, of
Yeah.
course, that's how that type of thing goes. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things. We'll talk about your team a little more in depth soon, but yeah, I mean, I think speaking from experience, where in the past couple of years I've had teams full of really young guys. It's like it always sucks when it doesn't happen in your lineup, but at the same time, you can at least take those moral victories where it's like at least now I feel like I have that guy. So it's always good to have players emerge like that. But all right, I'm gonna swing it over. I'm gonna bring up the playoff picture. Let me make sure everything's in order. All right, let me share this screen. All right, you guys see that? So this is everything I'd already sent it to the group chat, so we'll just show her very briefly. But right now, the current playoff picture, we got Wallace, the Zits, and two pins. Those are the three division leaders. The three wild card teams are Slippery Pete coming off of a massive week. We got Go Tigers and we got the Slow Show Kings. And then in the final six, it's the Suns, the Vibers, Sfogliatella, Big Brain, the Shits, and McMorrow. I want to look at the last four, though. I think that's a little bit more interesting because I feel like there has started to where we've started to grow a little bit of a divide, and it feels like it's kind of between the top six. I'm not saying that there is a clear cut top six right now, but I do feel like there are six teams that are starting to emerge, at least as those front runners for those playoff spots, with a few teams trailing. But I think what's interesting, and if we sort by the most points, right? You see Pete. he had the huge week, the 190 point week, so that really catapulted him. But even then, he was still on a hot streak. He was 4-0 in that stretch. But it's the three wild card teams that have had the best month stretch in terms of scoring. It's been Pete, then the Kings, and then right behind me is Go Tigers, and then there's like a small drop to Wallace, and then there's a little bit of a bigger drop as we go further down the list. But I do find it interesting that those three teams have had the best month stretch, and then right behind them are the three division winners right now. But then even when you look at how it goes in the wild card spot too, it's 9-8-7. I just find it interesting where you're seeing teams like the Vipers and teams like the Suns start to drop off a little bit over this month, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know how you guys are reading it. I mean, Wallace, you're a team, so you went 1-3. You had talked about it when we were doing our introductions, but you went 1-3, but you still stayed at the top. How are you feeling, in that position?
I feel pretty good. I'm definitely, I don't want to spoil anything, but I do think that what's the name of our division again? Are we Sprite Cranberry or whatever?
We
I
are
feel
Sprite Cranberry,
all
yeah.
right. So our division is on the rise. So I feel good about maintaining my lead in points for throughout the season, just with how my team is positioned. But, you have a couple unlucky weeks, the strokers or big brains start to rattle off some wins. I could easily end up not winning the division if you guys have an outright better record. I feel like if I maintain at least the tie for that lead in the division, that'll go to me because of the points for situation. So again, I feel about as good as I can despite the 3-game losing skid, which I definitely didn't see coming. So, but overall, I feel good where the team's at.
Yeah, when I was going through and I was just doing these numbers for this last month, I was like shocked. I pulled up the schedule because I knew that you were the one seed. I knew that you were still top of the league in scoring, and I was like, "Wait, what?" He went 1-3, but I didn't realize. I guess that you'd. I guess it just kind of slipped my mind that you started off what 5-0 to start the season. So yeah, I didn't see that coming at all. I didn't even realize that it was happening in real time. But I mean, wins are really so hard to predict and so hard to rely on. I mean, I think you had the second most points this week, and you lost in the biggest blowout. You lost by 50 points. So sometimes that's just how that stuff goes. So yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting though that this top six has kind of stayed in the top. I mean, Amaral, so you were what you're seventh or eighth in points right now, or in the playoff race, and then you are right there seventh in that. How are you feeling after this past month? 2-2 as well. I mean, you were a team too that you're 2 games back, so you're not out of it, right? So you can still sneak up and steal that division. I'm kind of in the same spot, but you kind of stayed right in the middle, but you're right behind two pins, and then you're only 30 points back in the last month off of like those next couple teams. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I mean, so Pins went 3-1 over that stretch. I went 2-2, but they only had one more point than me. Which is like funny because I felt like the gap was like really starting to widen. Like I don't feel like I was that close to the Pins over this last month. Like I felt my team like starting to fade a bit. Like I felt pretty good after the first 4 weeks. Even after like week 5, I felt pretty good. But these last few weeks have been a little bumpy. I mean, we'll see kind of how Tua uh gets back. I honestly like I literally don't know what to expect from Tua. Like he could put up like top 8 numbers at the quarterback position, or his career could be over next week. So it's like impossible to predict with him. But if he can get back, like even like Baker, like without Evans and Godwin, like still putting up stupid numbers, that defense sucks in Tampa. So it feels like they're just going to be in a bunch of shootouts. So like I feel good in those spots. I think I just gotta really start pushing the right buttons. Um, because there are some pieces there. Like I'm happy with Chase Brown. Like I'm cool with his production. If Tyrone Tracy can be like a weekly, even like top 20 running back like that, I'm totally cool with that. T Tank Dell, I'm hoping to see like rookie year Tank Dell now with Stephon Diggs out for the year. So, that's good. Terry McLaurin's putting up numbers. Neighbors is neighbors. The tight end position's a little tricky. Like kind of rotating back and forth here between Kraft and Laporta. It's like, I mean, they had the same exact amount of points last week, pretty much, but so it couldn't have gone wrong there. But like the week before, it was like I started Laporta, and for whatever reason, the target volume is just not there for him right now. So there are some good things, I mean, and some bad things, but I feel okay. I feel a little worse than when we did this 4 weeks ago, though.
Yeah, looking at it, I felt like over the last month you had slipped as well, and then you're looking at it, and like you said, you only lost one game in the division race to two pins over the month, and you're only 1 point behind them. And I mean, yeah, okay, you were seventh in the total league, but that's like still pretty good. I mean, you're still right there, right at the edge of the playoff picture. So, all things considered, yeah, it felt like the vibes were like off with your team, and then you're looking at it, and it's like I guess they really weren't. So it's like you're still in it. And yeah, I mean, it's you have all these players breaking out, and I think you got to feel good about that. It's one of those things where I feel like you're almost playing with house money, and it was a spot I think Wallace was in what 1 or 2 years ago, where I guess it would have been 2 years ago, where you were right on that edge of the playoff team, but you also had a pretty good pick, if not. So it's like whatever happens to your team, I feel like you're almost kind of winning just based off what the expectations were going into the season.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
We got any other takeaways from this past month when we look at it? I'll sort by wins as well. So Slippery Pete and the Zits, they stayed neck and neck 4-0. So I think that keeps the Gabagool division a pretty interesting race. And I think that those are two teams to really keep an eye on. I mean, those are two that, spoiler alert, but I have them ranked pretty high in these power rankings. But I mean, it just makes it interesting. I mean, Pete was a full 100 points ahead. And I mean, I think a lot of that does come from just the insane, what I think will probably be an outlier week. I don't think 190 point weeks are going to become the norm. But I do think that that kind of separates things and almost kind of makes it a little hard to evaluate at this point now. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they stayed neck and neck, I think that that keeps it pretty interesting. And then the fact that Go Tigers, I mean, I think that's a team that consistently gets a lot of hate, especially from people like myself. But they went 3-1 and then they put up a ton of points as well. So I mean, they're cooking it. I mean, I think the Gabagool division is pretty dangerous right now, and it feels like they're just kind of a division that if they're either all good or they're all bad, but it's always going to be a tight race until the end. I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts on that.
Well, I just want confirmation here. Like, so last time we did this 4 weeks ago, we were giving Mikey, the credit, if you want to put it that way, when they were 1-3. But now I think things have shifted over to Winspur, right? They're 3-1. Things are kind of
Yes. Yeah,
rolling
that's
for
when
them. So
Winsper gets things in order, and he's more
yeah,
of
yeah,
a,
Winspur must have stepped
mid-season
into the
second
picture
half
here.
guy. So, Mikey
Gotcha.
took the reins. I think Winsper was busy with some stuff, but he's back on the app now. He's setting those lineups, he's making the moves, and I think that they're going to navigate some of these things as we enter the back half of the season. But yeah, we got any closing thoughts before we swing it over to the draft lottery?
I'm just really scared of the Gabagool division, man. I mean, 0-3 the last 3 weeks. I got the Suns this week. On paper, it should be all right, but you never know. Feels like Gibbs and A-Chain are probably going to combine for like 70 on their own. And yeah,
Any
I
given
think
Sunday.
any given Sunday, man, I think my points against after Pete's ridiculous week is like 150 points, like higher than like the next closest team or something stupid like that after taking a quick look at it. So, yeah, man, we're lucky to be in a points for league. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm definitely trying. I didn't check the other records of our division, but I believe I'm 2-0 against Gabagool right now. So I'm trying to at least avenge those losses for you. And because it does kind of become a pride thing. At the end of the day, if it's not going to be me, I'm still rooting for the strength of my division because it's like a rising tides, whatever the hell the quote is. But yeah, okay, let's swing it over to the draft lottery. It's kind of just more of the same, right? There's not really much to talk about here. McMorrow just owns most of these picks. I feel like everything kind of stayed in the same position. Amaral, man, I guess since we have you here, you are a team. I mean, you have that third overall pick, but you're also fighting for a playoff spot. And I kind of mentioned it. It's almost like you're playing with house money. But if you put thought into that as the trade deadline approaches,
Um, Not really. Like that pick's not moving. I'm not moving that pick. Um, Even with it being like a shitty draft in comparison to like last year's draft, like the quarterback position specifically is kind of up in the air at this point. So I haven't given any thought in terms of like moving that pick. I'm like 99.9% sure I'm just gonna hold on to that. You know, we'll see what happens in the offseason, but that's not moving at the deadline. But I think it's sort of like a best of both worlds thing right now. Like in the past couple of years, my first 2 years in the league, I wasn't competing for the playoffs this deep into the season. So now I'm competing for playoff spots. We'll see if I get in. I mean, I'd probably say there's like a 35% chance that I get in, but if I'm able to, remain competitive throughout the regular season and kind of stay in this top 3 to 4 or in the lottery range, I guess, then I'm feeling pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you're in the lottery, it's like, I mean, you could finish seventh and just miss out on the playoffs and then get the first overall pick. And, that's the type of thing that can really just change the whole landscape of the league. And, I mean, even if you don't get the first pick, you never know who goes in what order, right? It's never just, best player, then the second best player, then the third best player. So, I mean, we look back at some certain drafts and it's like, two pins missing the playoffs and they get Jamar Chase and just what that did for their team long term is crazy. It's like, different implications like that. Wallace, you're a team, you're one of the few teams that still owns a pick that isn't McMorrow. You're currently on pace to have the 12th pick, for projecting out just based off of the current standings. But as the trade deadline approaches, I believe we're 2 weeks away. Do you feel like that's something that you're looking to shop and you're looking to add on, or do you think that that's another thing that you're going to try and hold and look to build your team with it through the draft?
Yeah, I think anything's on the table for sure. I was just kind of thinking about the approaching deadline and wondering where to improve. I really don't want to sound conceited when I say I don't exactly know where there. I don't think there's an obvious area of weakness. I'll kind of leave it at that. I feel actually the emergence of Bo Nix, which is really unlikely as like a legit, streaming option, QB3, maybe even QB2 with the rushing upside. Like I feel pretty comfortable with my quarterback room, which was definitely the biggest concern heading into the season, and especially now that Tua is back, and therefore I'm getting my Dolphins back and Nico back. Feel fine about the receivers. So frankly, I this time I'd expect to hold it. I just think I can feel pretty comfortable, riding older guys like Derrick Henry and Tyreek Hill until the wheels fall off because I still have my first in all the upcoming drafts. I have at least one first. So just kind of likes it, keeps me dangerous, keeps me versatile. So for now, I'm going to hold it and see if McMorrow just gets extremely horny to just add another to his collection. And if that's the case, maybe I'll move, but that's not the plan as of right now.
Yeah, it just feels like a weird market too, because I do feel like a lot of teams, and this is something that I don't think we saw last year, where there are so many teams that are still, they at least have a chance. And if a team wants to get aggressive, they might be able to make a push, even if they're, a little bit further down the board. But I just don't know who's really buying picks right now. And, McMorrow, he's obviously one of the people that clearly wants that pick and he wants to try and, round out that first round. But at the same time, it's like, what exactly are you going to get off of him unless you're just going to buy, a bunch of those guys that he still has on his roster in bulk or something. But it just doesn't feel like the type of championship push move that I would expect. So it's kind of strange where I'm not sure who's interested in picks. And that's something I've said about Pete's team too, where he has that 2026 first, and he's really been relying on being able to trade that for, a piece to, try and make that push down the stretch. And it's just like, I don't know who's really buying the 2026 draft right now. I feel like everybody's so focused on this season that I don't think people are thinking that far ahead yet. So I do feel like it's kind of an interesting market compared to years past. But yeah, like I said, I mean, we got the deadline approaching in, I believe, 2 weeks. It is the after the week 10 Monday Night Football game. And, reminder to everybody, because we did see it last year where what was it, Mikey and Two Pins, they were trying to make a trade. I think it was Mark Andrews and a pick and who knows whatever the hell else. And they actually just waited until the end, despite my warnings, and they couldn't get the trade off. So, that's how things happen. All of a sudden, Mark Andrews ends up on Pete's team, and he's terrible for the first few weeks. He seems to be great now, but those are the types of things you snooze, you lose, and that could definitely change how things in the league play out. But all right. As always, the show is brought to you by our lovely sponsors at Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communication and social media company. What started as a personal tool has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to build and execute a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow them on Instagram at sundog_multimedia. That is Instagram at sundog_multimedia. And now a word from our longtime sponsor at Easy Peasy Moving and Service. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism. That's Easy Peasy Moving and Service. Muscle for hire, moving, assembly, errands, you name it, they will do it. Easy peasy is a multi-service team. If you need something, just ask. I believe we're ready to hop over to the tiers.
Well, just real quick, we've had exciting deadlines 2 years in a row. Like 2 years ago, my first year in the league, I traded Dallas Goedert to Big Brain, and then he had like immediately got injured, like 3 minutes after I traded him.
Oh yeah.
It was
Oh
like
yeah, that
in
was
the
perfect. I mean,
moment in football
that was like the
season.
best deadline ever because I mean, I think I traded Miles Sanders and got Brandon Ayuk, which was an unbelievable deal. But yeah, that was just like the funniest thing ever. Like literally, Dallas Goedert gets on their team mid-game and then he breaks his leg and is out for like 6 weeks and doesn't contribute anything. I mean, that's just the curse of Big Brain. That's just how that stuff kind of goes. But all right, all right. We got the tiers, like I said, we're just wiping the slate clean. I don't want last week's or last month's tiers to influence anything on this month's tiers. But I'm gonna start with one. We're gonna put McMorrow at the bottom. What else is there to talk about, right? I mean, I said, I didn't want to spend too much time with McMorrow. I do just want to shout him out. I want to give him his flowers. He's still on his team, has Tank Bigsby, Bucky Irving, Josh Downs, Dontavian Wicks, Jalen Coker, Isaiah Gruendo, and Jalen McMillan. Those are still some pretty good guys. Like he still has, if he wanted to just clear his roster out and acquire more and more picks, like he still does have gas in the tank for that. I mean, I think some of those guys might be worth holding on to. They could be building blocks and at least flex players for him down the road. But he's still got. I mean, he has been hitting on these late round picks, on these undrafted free agents, on these waiver wire pickups. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about him, but I just wanted to give him his flowers on that. But we're gonna put him at the bottom. I don't know if you guys have any. Was he just McMorrow tier? Amaral, do you remember what we had for him last week?
Oh God, I forget. I forget what we had.
Yeah,
Let me
we'll just
let me
call
know
him
if this is
McMorrow.
like let me know if this is like an awful idea, but I was thinking like Halloween themed tiers with like Halloween candy. So
I kind of like it.
he's like the black licorice tier. Like
I, I do like that. Okay, that's how it's spelled, right? Licorice, just like that.
yeah, that is right.
All right, all right. He is going to be the black licorice tier. He is the worst candy. He's all eyes onto at least 2025. It still seems weird. He has a weird infatuation with 2027 picks, which is a bit concerning. I just feel like that's way too far down the road. But I would love to see him. I would just love to see him start making some moves. I'm excited to get to this offseason. I don't know if he's going to try and trade these picks. I don't know if he's going to try and just I would love to see him just draft everybody. Just hold on to all of them, get all the picks, try and hit on all these players and then just go crazy with those. But Wallace, you got anything to add on McMorrow or do you want to move on to the next team?
I think we've already wasted far too much breath on McMorrow.
All right. All right. Give us another team then.
Right after McMorrow, I mean, are we trying to go in order? Are we trying to go bottom up?
Yeah,
Make
maybe let's try and go bottom up. At least throw some names out there, and if we got to negotiate, we can. But yeah, I say let's try and go 12-1.
Perfect. I got a clear list, so I feel pretty good about my list, and I think that the next obvious team we have to talk about is what are they? The Zits? No, the Shits.
The
Sorry,
shits.
got a little. My bad. Yeah, the Shits. They're literally that meme of like the fucking Ferrari in like the driveway of like some shack. Like that's Josh Allen. Except there should be like maybe like an also like a motorcycle there. That could be like Brock Bowers. But
Yeah.
Simcoe's team is pretty ass. And he's
I,
just
the,
taking
the
L at the running back position. So
My favorite usage of that meme ever is when Jalen Reagor posted that before he got cut by the Patriots. Like, you're
oh yeah.
fucking ass and you're on an ass team. What are we doing?
Like, bro, you are literally the guy that got drafted before Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
That's what you are. Uh, yeah, I mean, I will say just to defend Simcoe a little bit. I mean, he does have a little bit more than just that, right? He's got Herbert. It looks like Drake May is a stud. I think he looks unbelievable. He's got Olave, Lad McConkey appears to be breaking out. And then depending on how you feel about Roma Dunze so far, I mean, I do think that he has some great pieces when it comes to building that team. But I think my concern just remains where it's like you look and you're like, well, how is he going to fill out the rest? And I mean, if he feels like he has three established quarterbacks, then maybe he could trade one of them, try and get a haul just to fill out that roster. But I mean, at the same time, you kind of want to hold on to those guys just to be absolutely certain that you have at least two quarterbacks. And, we want to make sure that Drake May is the guy. I mean, he's only played, what, two starts so far, and he just left the last one with a concussion. But, we just want to make sure that he is the guy. So, I mean, that could be a thing that he maybe looks forward to in the offseason. But yeah, it's like he's got these unbelievable pieces, and then the rest is just kind of shit. And it's like, okay, he's got a 2027 first, and then what? So, yeah, I mean, I think he is the clear 11th team here. What Amaral, you got an idea for a candy here?
I think like the natural progression would be candy corn. Um, or like also like when you're like trick-or-treating as a kid, like somebody would give you those fucking popcorn balls. It's like what are we doing with the popcorn ball? Like I want the candy. So
I'm
I don't
thinking
know.
of
I'll
that
leave it
or
up to you
like
guys.
the chalky. What's like the chalky? It's almost like a coin. I forget what they're
Oh,
called, but
like
you
a
get like
Necco wafer?
yeah, like the Necco wafer. Yeah, when you get shit like that, like I'd be so pissed off. Like a Smartie, I'd be okay with. A Necco wafer was some bullshit. I mean, I just personally, I feel like all Halloween candy should just be chocolate. I'm not like I don't need the Sour Patch Kids. I don't need the Swedish Fish. I want pure chocolate. I want like the different shaped Reese's. I want the mini Snickers. I mean, I'm a full size guy. I grew up in a full size house, but I'm not going to complain when it's a beggars can't be choosers thing. When you're trick or treating, I'll take what I can get. But I was raised properly by my parents, I will say. But yeah, I mean, I like the pure chocolate bars. That's all I need. So I think anything below that tier is pretty shit. And I do think candy corn's pretty bad. I was in Salem a couple weeks ago. I saw a candy corn candle that did smell delightful, and it looked like candy corn. It was layered with the colors of the candy corn. I almost bought it, but it was like a $25 candle. I couldn't do that shit.
For the candle market, that's not too bad though. To have a nice little seasonal treat that looks the part. I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm one of those guys where it's like I don't always have to buy two, or it's like I burn one and then I never burn the other. Like I just I'd be upset when it's gone. I'd be too sad. So
Fair enough. Fair
yeah,
enough.
so they say it's better to have loved than lost, but I don't know. All right, so we'll keep Simcoe. I think these two teams at least belong in their own tier. There's McMorrow who's like clearly just at the bottom. He can't put up any points. I mean, though I will say there are weeks, and as a team that only plays them once, I'm glad I got the McMorrow game out of the way. Especially once bye weeks start to set in, you just never know. But it's good to just know that I'm not going to be the team that loses to McMorrow. It's good to have that out of the way because you just never know what can happen. You don't want to have that blemish on your record. So he is a team
But
where it's like
like,
he has those guys I shouted out where it's like there are weeks where if a couple of them score touchdowns, I mean, he could put up, 80, 85 points. And if he catches you on a bad week, like he can't steal one from you.
hey, he put up like 90 against me. I felt like he was like biting at my ankles or some shit. I was like, whoa, whoa, like
Yeah,
fucking
I think I ended up beating him pretty bad, but it was like in the 1 o'clock slate. I think it was when the Jags and the Pats played, and Bigsby had well like 100 yards, a touchdown, maybe two touchdowns or something. And once he put up those points, I was like, oh boy, that's not good. That's not how I wanted to start my morning. But I ended up pulling away from him. But yeah, it's good to have him out of the way. I mean, I did lose to Simcoe, but I mean, Simcoe, like I said, I mean, he does have some good players. And when you got Lad McConkey scoring twice, and Herbert throwing for 270, 300 yards, and Drake May running touchdowns and stuff like that, you're going to put up some points. And of course, Josh Allen's one of the best fantasy players ever. So, all right, let's move past those teams. Um, I'm going to throw. I'm going to throw two teams out here because I think that maybe this is where we could get a little bit of a debate. Maybe you guys do feel the same way, but I think these are two teams that at least should be tiered together because I have a list 12 through 1, and then I have tiers split amongst those, but there are kind of tiers that almost break my rankings and could maybe move them out of order. But I got two teams at 10 and 9. Uh, I got the Vibers and I got the Suns. I mean, I feel like they are just two teams that hit an absolute skid over the last month. And I just feel like they are, for the most part, and I'll tip a few other picks, but I think that Amaral and Big Brain, those are two teams that are still, making things interesting when it comes to that divisional race. And, if they have a few lucky breaks, they can still sneak into the playoffs that way if they're not able to catch up with the points. I feel like the Suns and the Vibers, they're both a couple games out of the division. They're both, losing ground on points. I just feel like when we're looking at this overall playoff picture, they're still in it, but they are the most outside looking in. So I have them at 10 and 9. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I'm not too passionate about how I rank the two of them, in that tier. I don't know how you guys feel.
So I'll stir the pot a little bit. I think there's still a lot of upside on the Suns. I look at the backfield of Gibbs and A-Chain, and I get a little tingly. Maybe I'm showing too much respect with them on the schedule for this week, but I think they are one tier above. I think the Vibers are right there, but I would propose the Suns to be a little higher, and I gotta put Amaral in that tier a little like with the Vibers in this next group. So that would be my argument. I'll turn it over to Amaral to hear his rhetorical.
Wow.
So I mean, I had Big Brain um in a tier alone, and then myself grouped with the Vibers and the Suns.
So Big Brain, I would rank them lower, but the fact that they are technically tied for the division lead, they would be losing out on the points for tiebreaker. But the fact that they could be a division leader and they could be a top three seed as soon as next week, um, I have to at least pay them a little respect there. So when it comes to power rankings, yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're a great team. I think that they have been pretty bad so far this season, but they might have something when it comes to Jameis Winston, who they got via trade. They might have Christian McCaffrey coming back, and when it comes to what they can do, I mean, they have some draft capital. I think that they can be strategic at the deadline. I don't think they necessarily have to be buyers or sellers. I think that they could be a little bit of both, and they can make moves and remain competitive. But I just think the fact that they can literally be a top three seed, as soon as next week, bumps them above a few of the other teams who just simply aren't in that position.
I'm pretty high on the brain. I know this has been a pretty anti-brain program, and I understand it. I enjoy the jokes as much as anybody, but I think if we were going from the bottom up, I think we got to wait a little bit before we talk about big brain because I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I
high.
agree with that. I mean, I'll say I have them power ranked, and of course, that's not where they are in the playoff rankings, but I have them power ranked at 7. I had them a few spots above that. Um, do we have kind of I mean, what do we think? At least the Vibers, are they 10th? Is that where are we feeling that?
I can get behind that.
Okay, so we got the Vibers here.
Yeah, I mean the
Wallace was
four
lobbying
game
for
losing streak
Amaral to
too.
be in that tier. I see the argument. That's not how I had it. I mean, I personally had Amaral 2 spots above the Vibers and in a tier above. Amaral, what's your defense of your team?
I mean, they are what they are right now. The last 2 weeks they've been pretty fucking ass. So I think I didn't like I'm not gonna argue against that. I had a nice 4 week stretch. Like I'm losing track of the weeks here. Hold on a second. Like from weeks 3 through 6, like I was feeling really good, but it's been 83, which is pitiful. I lost an all-time stinker to Big Brain 85 to 83. Um, and then last week I lost to Mikey and I only put up 107. So um, again, I think I'd be looking at my team a little bit differently had I just pressed the right buttons and like went with the right Bills receiver, like had I gone Keon Coleman over Cooper and started Tyrone Tracy like that, I probably, if I put up 125, 130, I'd probably feel a lot better. But, 190 points combined over 2 week stretch, that's not good. And we're judging it, based on what we've done to this point, not what we're predicting will happen in the future. So I got to live with that ranking.
Yeah, I
I think
mean, my argument against the Suns as well is, I mean, one, they just lost a bunch of ground. Mike Evans went down with the injury, then they traded him, and I mean, the Suns, I know that they view that trade as a good win now trade for them, which I just didn't really see it that way when we were making the deal. I saw it more as like, you know, they were trading a Mike Evans who can help a team make a playoff push for, some younger guys as far as JSN goes, and then also getting DJ Moore. So it's like, I mean, I guess technically it helps them win now in the sense that Mike Evans wouldn't be playing, and JSN and DJ Moore can play for them, but I didn't feel like that was a move that made them better this year. And then, you got ETN, he's been dealing with the injury, and then it just feels like he's just losing ground to Tank Bigsby in that backfield. I don't really know what their direction is. I feel like they're kind of stuck in the middle. Those are always the teams that I kind of target in these rankings, but I just feel like they need to make some decisions now, and I'm not really sure if they have like the players to make moves at the deadline. I'm pulling it up right now. I'm looking. I mean, they have like a bunch of third round picks and stuff, and they have a second round pick to play with. But yeah, I just don't really know, if the juice is worth the squeeze and trying to make that push, if they can even get it there, or if there are moves that would be worth making. Of course, Brian Thomas also, dealing with a potential injury and potentially some missed time as well. So I just don't really feel like they really have the horses to look at. I mean, in their flex, they got JSN, they got Keenan Allen, and then on the bench, it's just like it's not too interesting to me. I just don't know if they really have the juice. I mean, like any given week when they have full health, I do agree with you, Wallace. I mean, A-Chain and Gibbs can just go off and they can score 60 points between the two of them. But yeah, I just don't know. I just feel like long term they just don't really have it to get out of the hole that they've kind of dug themselves into. So that's why I have them ranked lower. So I don't know. Let's try and get some sort of consensus here. So we got these three are the bottom three. Is there another team? I mean, Amaral, do you think you belong in this tier with the Vibers then?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. So
I
should
do
we
think
put
Big
you?
Brain's in this just based purely on what we've seen so far, with them being like sub 800 points. I
You're gonna
think
make me bang the big brain drum, and I don't want to bang it, but you're twisting my arm, dude. Like fuck. This
I
is. Go ahead. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
no, like I totally like get the wins thing. Like 5 wins is 5 wins, but like also their bottom three, right? The third worst in points scored. Um, and if we're not doing any projecting and like anticipating the McCaffrey return or anything like that, like I just think that they're squarely in this mix of just kind of mediocre teams right now.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you that I just it's kind of like all these New York teams, the Jets, the Mets, the Yankees, all those teams where you just know it doesn't matter. The Knicks, it doesn't matter. They could sign the whole all-star team. They could sign the Olympic team. They could go out and they could get anybody. They're still going to lose in tragic and hilarious fashion. That's just how that stuff goes. And that's just how it goes with Big Brain. They don't win playoff games. They'll put up these insane records, right? I always put them in the Peyton Manning tier where they're a regular season team. They go ahead and they do that stuff. I think that Big Brain they've always been slowly inching their way further and further down. The rest of the league's been catching up to them. They drafted with a very redraft mindset to begin with, and that's why them and McMorrow were so dominant at the beginning. But yeah, I don't know. I don't personally feel like Big Brain's going to pull it off, but like I said, I just have to respect the fact that they could literally be a top three seed. They would be the number three seed, of course. They wouldn't have the points to move up in those rankings, but just the fact that they could cement a playoff spot like that, I have to respect that. So I have them a little bit higher. I mean, I have the Suns ranked up next. I think it feels like we all kind of have the Suns in that range. Do we feel like the Suns belong in this tier too?
I do, yes.
I
That's
also
fine.
do. Wallace, it seems like you're a little bit higher. I don't know if you have an argument to keep them above this.
I think that's fine. I'm not that passionate about this point in the rankings. I just think the Suns, I look at it and frankly, I could have misinterpreted this exercise a little bit. I was really just looking at the rosters and I tried to really keep in mind what teams were trending up, what teams are trending down, and just kind of how I feel like how they're positioned over the next, stretch run over the next couple weeks and whatnot. That being said, I feel like the Suns are a little bit better, but they're definitely basically in this conversation. I think this is a pretty reasonable tier. I think we're basically good to move on, but I do think it could be worth mentioning to see if Go Tigers belongs in this tier as well and make it a four-man tier. Now, not married to that idea, but just wanted to toss it out there because I feel like they've trended down with the loss of I know that they beat my team the other week, but now Chris Godwin, RIP to his season. Feel like they're already a pretty thin team. Like I think they started Zeke this past week. Like what the fuck? So, anyways, I just wanted to throw them out there as a potential, fit into this tier.
I think that's a fair argument. I did have them ranked a little bit higher. Obviously, I gave away the bottom six. I had them ranked at six. I kind of did keep it split between the playoff teams and the non-playoff teams, but I had just notes on and we don't have to talk about my team yet, but I had notes on my team and Go Tigers as being two of the hottest teams, but it felt like mine was more sustainable than theirs. And a note that I had on Go Tigers, of course, the Godwin injury, but it just feels like, Rashad White, Zeke Elliott, and Darnell Mooney are far too important to this team for me to take them seriously. So I did have them ranked higher than you're suggesting, but I can definitely be talked down just based off of what you're saying, and then even just kind of thinking out loud on the notes that I had. Amro, how do you feel? I don't know where you had Go Tigers ranked. I mean, I do have to give them. They went 3-1. I think they had what the third most points over the last month, so they did make a massive, massive push. But like I said, I look at it and it just doesn't feel as sustainable to me. Amaral, what do you think?
Um, they're a tough team. I probably have them on the next tier above this. Like I think this tier is fine how it is with these three. I think I'd probably have Go Tigers one tier above. Um,
All right, you got a name for this tier? You got a candy suggestion?
mm, what do we got? What do you got,
I
Wallace?
mean, to me,
Like, I feel like you need something that you're not crazy disappointed with, right? But like it's a candy. People have mixed feelings about it. You guys ever dabble into junior mints at all? How do we feel about
Yeah,
junior mints?
I
You
do.
guys
I mean,
remember?
personally, I love Junior Mints.
I am also a Junior Mints fan.
Okay, so that's like too good of okay.
It's maybe too. I'm trying to think. Maybe like
I think
almost
it's
like
just
a.
like something that's like just like there. Like you mentioned, one you mentioned Smarties before. Like Smarties are just
I'm almost
always like
thinking like
there.
a 100 grand bar. It's like when you get the other Hershey bars that have maybe they have a nut in it or they have like some nougat in it, and you get like the very little ones or things like that. It's the ones that come in those variety packs. I feel like it's one of those where it's like at the end of the day you just want some chocolate and it's like yeah I'll just take a little hit of that, but
Like a
that's kind
Mr.
of it where it's
Goodbar.
it's
Is
kind of
that
like the
what we're
neutral
talking
thing
here?
where I'm not like fuck yes like I got that, but I mean these are three teams that like I don't think that they're either like any of these three teams are out of it. Like I just think that they're kind of outside looking in. They're going to need some good breaks. They're going to need to put together a strong next couple weeks just to make sure that they're still in it. But I mean, yeah, these are teams like I mean, I think the fact that it's the B tier, I do think it's like that B C tier. So I don't
I
know,
got it.
Wallace, you got something?
I think if we're going like chocolate candy that's just kind of there, I feel like we were gaming too high with like Mr. Goodbar 100 grand. I think those are pretty gas. There's three people in this tier. I think it has to be Three Musketeers. It's just kind of empty.
I think
It's
that's fair.
fluffy. It's there. It's middle of the pack. Like you're never reaching for that as your first chocolate choice. I feel like all the signs are leading us to
Yeah,
Three
I
Musketeers.
mean, listen, I mean, I am I'm a big Three Musketeers defender. I do love the Three Musketeers. I think that's a fair
Uh,
assessment though. I mean, I view the
yeah, I
Three
think that was some
Musketeers as like a palate cleanse. Like if I'm in the grocery store and I'm in the aisle and I'm looking and a lot of times I mean, personally I'm a guy I like to walk the whole store. I walk the entire store. I like to smoke a little bit before I go to the grocery store. My lovely fiance, she'll give me her list. I'll make sure I get all of her stuff. And then I just roam the store and I look and I graze and I grab whatever I want. But if I'm in that line and I'm checking out and I see it, maybe I'll grab like a Reese's or something like that. Maybe I'll get a Twix or sometimes I even like a good Rolo. But I also grab the Three Musketeers, and that's like my warm up because it's so light, it's so fluffy. You finish it in like 3 or 4 bites, easy. You don't even feel it. It's like a palate cleanser, and then you have the real chocolate bar. So I do think the Three Musketeers. I think that's pretty fair.
I think that was
I
like the best analysis we've had all day. I don't think we're gonna top that. I think
yeah, I
that's
think
perfect.
that was some very sound logic from Wallace. Um, yeah, Three Musketeers it is, I think.
All right, I'm looking at okay. They do it with the number.
Good check.
All right. Next tier. Okay, we were talking about Big Brain. We were talking about Go Tigers. I feel like those are the next two teams up. I don't know if any of you disagree. How do we want to rank them? I mean, personally, I would go Big Brain, then Tigers if we're going from the bottom up. Wallace, you've been the Big Brain guy. Uh, I don't know if you want to lead off, if you want to make an argument, because you were kind of the one that was dragging Go Tigers down as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Go Tigers is definitely next for me, but I feel like Big Brain is just such a meme at this point. We just kind of like look over them as to what they are, and I feel like the brain has swelled. over the past couple of weeks. I feel like the best thing that could have possibly happened to them is, hold on, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, was Deshaun Watson tearing his Achilles and the city of Cleveland rejoicing because Jameis Winston's actually like I think the perfect guy you want to plug in as your QB2, right? Like he's going to be a real asset, with a real ceiling to pair next to Jordan Love, who's a bona fide QB1. I know that we're projecting and it's really, nerve-wracking to trust anything Kyle Shanahan says or anything coming out of the 49ers camp, but they could be looking at the barrel of a bona fide QB1. They have a top player in all fantasy, and they have three other like really solid RB2s to fill out the other RB spot and the flex spots. And then at wide receiver, Devontae Adams got an upgrade. Deebo Samuel's still a really solid star. Pickens is on the up and up. Like I had Big Brain at 4 overall. Like I really do think they are certainly not in the top tier, but I think they're a real threat. And I feel like their record is there. The points for is kind of whatever. But I feel like they have all the pieces of a team that inevitably will probably make it to the playoffs and lose round one, but they're definitely going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair argument. Like, we still have what, 6 more weeks left in the season. I think I just look at it and I see, right, they are 130 points back. I mean, first of all, Mitch already paid off the bet. That's just pathetic.
What was the bet again? Can you remind me?
It was just straight up head-to-head points. My team versus their team, me versus Mitch. $48 plus inflation from the day that we agreed on the trade to the day that the bet processes. That was it. And I offered him a buyout of $48 now. No
no.
inflation. We are talking about what, 7 months of inflation. I mean, what did he, why would he do that? Why would he pay the bet off? Why
That's
would
the
he do that?
pussiest shit I've ever heard. I actually like feel like sick to my stomach. I just kind of defended him without that context because I thought it was like a player bet. I remember you guys saying that, but then I got distracted. I'm like, no way he pay that out unless like his player got hurt. I mean,
Yeah.
he's pretty far back, but like that is hilarious. That
And
is
like, I mean, like I followed up and I was kind of like taunting him with it. And like, yes, I had a huge month. I made huge strides, but it's like 130 points is not like that insane to cover. I mean, like I could have an 80-point week next week and they could have 120 points and all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, like they're back in it. But I mean, whatever. I mean, I added that shit to the money list. I'm trying to claim that shit. So, $48 in my pocket. What am I going to do? Complain? And almost part of me is like, I'm almost like rooting for my own collapse just for the fact that I could laugh in their face and be like, you still have to pay me
yeah.
$48 and you're crazy if you think that I'm like paying off that bet. Like we agreed, the bet's over.
Oh, that's
But
that's
yeah, I mean, so they lose a little respect from me. I mean, and they already had very little respect for me to begin with. But no, I mean, I do think that's fair. I mean, I think we're talking about two teams where it's like we're not talking about two teams that are lighting the league on fire. So like we do have to project a little bit. And like I said, I just don't feel like Go Tigers is as sustainable as they've been playing these past few weeks. And I do think that Big Brain is more of a threat. So at least if we're talking that, I do think that Go Tigers has to be next. Amaral, do you have any pushback on that?
Not really. I have them both in this tier, so like I don't feel strongly either way.
All right, so we have 6 left. I think Amaral and I both had them, right around this spot. Wallace, you said that you had them fourth.
that's
I mean, do you
that's
want to maybe bring us into who you had sixth and fifth, and then maybe we can try and sort things out from there and figure it out?
Honestly, I'm open to it. If we're like, to be honest with you, I'm now alarmed looking at how far behind they are on points for. But I just think they're looking at a totally different team once you lock in the upgrades at quarterback that they've made. Pickens on the up and up, getting McCaffrey back. So I'm definitely projecting. That being said, we can leave them in this tier, but for the sake of conversation, if you're curious of my 5, 6, I feel like this would is screaming to have their own tier. I had 2 pins and then the Zits in like that next tier. And that's a little bit of a hot take. We're talking about some champions right there. And I understand the legacy component, but if we're being objective, I feel like the Zits took a big hit with losing Ayuk in an already thin receiver room. And then I'm looking at two pins, and I just feel like they are just razor thin. And Kareem Hunt is a time bomb who is producing at a high level right now. But if and when Pacheco comes back, I assuming he will for the fantasy playoffs, that's going to be a massive hole. So that's my 5, 6. Wanted to open up for your thoughts.
All right, so big brain. So do we think they're the same tier?
That's fine with me. I'll concede that point. I
Okay,
can,
okay. So let's get a candy here.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. What are you guys saying? Because here's the thing. I mean, everybody's got different tastes in candy as well. I am a notorious sweet tooth, so I can defend all of these. So you guys might suggest ones that are absolute shit that you think, and I might think that they're fucking delicious. I mean, I will say just to get a take out there because I feel like we're already past that segment, though some might feel strongly about them. Whoppers are terrible. That is one. If I get that in my trick or treating sack, I am throwing those through the wall. Like I am
Yeah, I
So
think Big Brain and Go Tigers are too good to be a Whopper.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to get that
Yeah,
take out there. I don't know how you guys felt about them. I fucking hate them. I think that they are fucking terrible.
so
yeah,
I
they're
know for a fact that Whoppers are like Jordan Menard's favorite
Oh, he
candy,
loves them. He loves
like a
those and
fucking
the Red
sicko.
Hots, the Flaming Hots, whatever.
Yeah. So I almost was like completely fine just for the sake of like I personally think that Go Tigers should be in the tier below because I don't respect them. And just the fact that it's Jordan's favorite candy, I'm open to the idea of the Whoppers here, but if we want to find a more objectively better candy, we can. But I think Big Brain would approve, or at least one
Yeah, I
third
mean
of the
Jordan for sure would take that as a compliment.
yes. Yeah. So it's a mixed bag to say the least. It could be a spot for the junior mints. Throwing that out there. Perhaps a Butterfinger. I'm a proponent of the Butterfinger. I know if we're thinking in terms of
I
chocolate,
think the Butterfinger is actually good because I think the Butterfinger is delicious, right? I mean,
I
I
do
grew up,
too.
I love The Simpsons. Bart Simpson was the Butterfinger spokesman. So naturally I grew up thinking that Butterfingers were delicious. And they are. I mean, I mean, I literally I have my contribution to the Halloween decorations in my apartment has been I went to the grocery store, I bought a Halloween themed candy bowl, and then the last couple of weeks I've just been getting a bag of assorted chocolates and dumping them in the bowl. And I'm the only one in my house that eats them. And right now I have the Reese's, the Take Five, and I have the Kit Kat, and then I have the Butterfinger, and the Butterfinger is delicious. And yes, it gets stuck to your teeth, and that's a major downside, and that's what kind of keeps it out of those elite tiers. So I do feel like the Butterfinger could be a fair one here, because I would also put that just based off of flavor profile. I would definitely put that, though I think I would rather have a Three Musketeers. If we're talking flavor, I'm putting the Butterfinger well above that.
I love it. I'm all for it. Amaral, I need your
yeah, I'm into it. That's a good one. Butterfinger's good.
all right, let's do it. Now the wheels are spinning
And
for
you
me.
know what? It's actually kind of good because these are two teams that could drop the ball. So I think having them as the Butterfinger tier, uh, Butterfingers, Butterfinger. We'll do Butterfingers. Two of them in there. All right, we'll talk. Okay, you know what? Two pins I had at five as well. I think that's where you said you had them, Wallace. I'm also low on them. I mean, yes, okay, they are. The thing is, I just feel like, especially if we're talking power rankings, I feel like they're in a good position where I think they have a two-game lead in their division. It feels like they're in a good enough points for spot where they're one of the few teams that I would actually call a playoff lock right now. And that's not because I think they have one of the best teams. It's because I think that they're in a good position with like I said, with their division and with the points for that. I feel like no matter what, like barring just a total collapse, I feel like they should be locked into a playoff spot. I'm not sure which seed that'll be, but um, yeah, so I still had them at five, and that's where I kind of hinted where I had my numerical rankings, but I also had the tiers, and that was one of those teams that kind of broke the tier because I just felt like they're a lock into the playoffs, but at the same time, I just don't feel like they're very strong at all. So, I mean, maybe five is fair. Where'd you have them, Amaro?
That's about where I had them. I mean, I the depth scares me. That's like kind of similar to Pete. Like there's just not really much depth there, so injuries could really ruin their team. But
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
I,
they
I
they
think
had so they had like a pretty solid month, but they had two big weeks. and then they had two sub 90 weeks, and that's just like way too streaky. And they got cut back, and at full strength, like their lineup does look very good, but even still, it's like, well, okay, they have to either start Tyler Lockett or Ramondre Stevenson as their final flex, and they don't really have many options behind that. And those two in general, I mean, Ramondre, of course, had a great week last week, but I mean, he just hasn't been that strong since his great start to the season. So, having Lockett and Stevenson be the only two options for that spot, that is concerning, and I feel like that's where they lose some ground to the few teams that I have ranked above them. So I don't know. It feels like five's kind of a consensus on them. Do we think that the Zits are in that tier as well? I mean, I see the argument. I had them ranked a little bit higher, but I do see that argument. Wallace, do you want to flesh that out a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the Zits are a legit squad, obviously the defending champs. When I really took a look at their roster, I really wasn't all that impressed. And I think that Brandon Ayuk injury is really tough. Like, sure, Dobbs has come on strong lately. Jamison Williams, if and when he gets back from that suspension, was a producer early in the season, so he's fine. But like, you're still maybe starting Austin Eckler at a flex spot. Like they traded a second round pick that one, if we're talking about just like how that affects the vibes, I felt like that's a little desperate. You're trading for a backup running back who's old with a second round pick like late in the season. Like, I don't know. I think them and Two Pins definitely belong in the same tier. I think that the record's there. They're absolutely playoff teams. But I'm not really scared of their roster as much as I am my top three teams.
I think you sold me on it too, because I do actually, now that you're laying it out, I see the parallels between their two teams where, like you said, I mean, that was another team that I had written down as a playoff lock just because of their position when it comes to record and points for. I mean, right now, it feels like Pete's right at their heels when it comes to the division, but they are still in the driver's seat. They still have they're still a game up on them, and everything, and their points for are still in a really good position. So yeah, those are two teams that I agree with you. I think those are two teams that are playoff locks, but when it comes to, their overall threat level, I just think that there are a few teams that I have ranked above them. I mean, I still think that they're two plenty dangerous teams, but yeah, I think that's fair. I think putting them at four, right? That would make them four. Do we put them above two pins?
I would say yes.
I
I would,
agree. That's where I was going. Amaral, do you agree?
Uh, I no, I don't know. I think I'd honestly have two pins higher. I also like might be projecting a bit with like Mahomes because Mahomes is like the QB 20 something so far this year. So if we're basing it just on what's happened and just what Mahomes has done to this point this season, then I think it probably does make sense to have pins behind the Zits.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel so much. Like I said, when I look at that team and I look at both of their teams when you're talking about full strength, I mean, I don't love that it's Ramondre or Lockett or like Brendan Rice in that flex spot. Like those are basically their options. And yeah, okay, and where I see the parallels, it's like okay, the Zits they have to start Eckler and they have to start Xavier Worthy, who I don't think is too reliable, and especially with DeAndre Hopkins coming in, I just don't know, what he's going to be able to be for the Zits going down the stretch. But like they still have Dobbs. I do think when Jameson Williams is back, I think that he's going to step right back in. I mean, Dan Campbell, he's a guy that you can really, I mean, I follow like the coach speak index, right? And it's like whenever he talks highly about a guy, like he really gets them involved and he loves them. And he has been absolutely going to bat for Jameson Williams. So I think that when he comes back to the field, he's going to step right back into his role. And, maybe it is going to be a little bit boom or bust, but I mean, that's still, a constant touchdown threat, a constant threat for a 40-yard bomb. So it's like I just feel like the Zits do have more options, and I just feel like I look at their team and it's a little bit more fresh to me. So yeah, I mean, it's still we're talking about the fourth and fifth best teams in our eyes. Like, we're still I think it's still a compliment. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think four is a good spot. Uh
yeah, I
what are we
think
thinking for Candy here?
so. The only thing I have to bring it up, I think this is good.
Yeah.
But I do feel like if we decide to leave this tier the way it is with these two and not add the strokers to this tier, then I feel like we have to do two more tiers after that. Because I like the strokers. I do put the strokers above these two teams that we're talking about. However, I don't think that the Strokers are in the top tier with Pete and myself. I will spoil that. So
Yeah,
one
no,
of the
I
leagues
I
I
I
was
agree with that, and I would say so. I would have my team up next, definitely. Um, I just wouldn't put myself in the tier with them two, just because I don't feel like I said, I see the parallels between their two teams. I just don't feel like my team is the same as theirs. I mean, we might both have our pros and cons, but I just don't feel like I have the same ones as them. Where I feel like they're in two almost identical situations. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe if you had to rank me with them, I mean, if you want to be below them, then I could have a tier there. But yeah, I just feel like I should be in my own tier, whether it's above or below them.
That's fine with me. That's fine with me. I think we can turn the conversation back to a candy name here.
Okay,
Uh if that's okay with Amaral as well. I mean, now we're talking about some pretty damn good candies. I'm
Yeah, some good ones
I'm
now.
not the highest on Kit Kats, and I'm not the highest on either of these teams, but I know, Kit Kats are universally beloved. Who's going to be upset with the Kit Kat? So that's my initial, just tossing it out there, not married to it. Want to see what the boys think.
I love a Kit Kat. I love the big cat where it's just
Mm.
like a bunch of wafers stacked on top of each other. Those are delicious. But I mean, I do love the classic Kit Kat. I I think that that's a pretty solid choice. I mean, maybe some people might take offense to it and think that it's like plain or something, but I mean, I think it's perfect chocolate. I think when you get wafers like that, they're always delicious. I love the Keebler, the Keebler like vanilla wafers, and it's like a really thin wafer, and it's got like the cream in the middle. Those are unbelievable. I get those from Cumbies all the time. But yeah, I mean, anything with a wafer and chocolate, I think is always delicious. So I think a Kit Kat's pretty good. Amaral, do you concur?
So let's see. We have two tiers left after this one.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think Reese's is the clear top tier. I don't know if you guys have. I'm just trying to like
I'm not
work
going to
my way
argue
from the
that.
Oh,
top down here. Uh, so I'm a big Sour Patch Kids or Sour Patch Watermelon specifically. Like I think that's like just below Reese's. I don't know if you guys have feelings on that. I'm just trying to think about where to, if a Kit Kat might be too low, I think. Like personally, I would maybe like a Twix or a Snickers I would have above a Kit
I do
Kat.
love a Twix. I love a Twix. I mean, like I said, personally, I'm a chocolate guy, especially when it comes to Halloween candy. But I mean, I do appreciate all Sour Patch products, and I also respect that I'm below consensus when it comes to my ranking on them. I do still think that it's a good candy, but I just put most chocolate above stuff like that. So I mean, I don't know if you guys feel strongly about Sour Patch. I could definitely agree with that because like I do agree that that's about where that should be in those rankings, but in my personal rankings, I don't have it as high. I do love the Kit Kat. I mean, if we're comparing it where it ranks, I mean, I think the Kit Kat's great. I mean, I personally wouldn't take offense to being ranked as a Kit Kat.
yeah. I feel like the Sour Patch is just like they're the top of their tier. If you're looking for something more sour slash sweet instead of like the chocolate lane, I feel like the Sour Patch Kids kind of run that
Oh,
camp.
that's number
If
one.
anything, if anything, that might be a little too high for this tier. So I think if we're keeping it to chocolate because we have a couple extra, candies in the bank, I'm cool with Kit Kat, Twix, Snickers. I think those are all pretty reasonable for this tier. My personal vote is a Kit Kat, but I could be convinced that either way. It seems like we have a nice chocolate theme going here as well. So
It
I think
does.
I feel like I'm kind of leaning Twix. I feel like Twix might play a little bit better on the bracket. I do just worry that people might take offense to being ranked as like a Kit Kat. They might just feel like it's a little too plain because that
I
does
also
kind
think
of
it like
that almost feels like somewhere in between that Three Musketeers Butterfingers range,
Two
just
Kids
where it's
does
like you're almost trying to
also.
make a point that it's like plain and simple and something like that.
Yeah, I was saying two pins. They do consider themselves the standard, right? You could say a Kit Kat is standard, positive. It's
Oh,
not standard like
totally.
derogatory. So, to each their own. I think
And
we are
you know what
all
I'll just say, and I'm not gonna lobby for this to be the ranking, and this might be a hot take. I'm not sure. I love a pure Hershey bar. Love a pure Hershey bar. When you
I'm
just
so
need
with
like a
you.
hit of chocolate, oh my
So
God,
with
just
you.
breaking off a piece, it's unbelievable. It's so good. But yeah, okay, okay. You know what? Let's go with Kit Kat. Let's do Kit Kat. All right. So I take it. My team's next. We'll put it here. Um, Yeah, I mean, I'll just give myself my flowers here, right? 3-1 over the last month, second most points for over that month. Only lost out to Pete. I'm 70 points ahead of seventh place. I feel like with the current landscape, I should be safe. I'm confident with how my team will perform throughout. I feel like this is what I built my team for. My team is at least built to sustain the regular season and take those hits. So I like myself to be the kind of steady Eddie, and I feel like that's what I was a couple years ago, but I wasn't doing it at a high enough scoring output where I feel like I am getting the points now. But I like my team to be the team that's putting up those 120, 130 point weeks and just chipping away, grinding away while other teams might have an 80 or 90 point week because of bye or injuries or something. So, I mean, I really like my outlook for the regular season. I think that if a team like Big Brain or Amaral were to sneak up and steal the division, that could make things a little hairy for me right now. I would definitely like to pass Mikey this week at least, or in the next week or two, just to feel a little more comfortable. But I don't love being that 6 seed, but I do like where my team's at, and I feel like I have one of the hottest teams right now in the league. But I really just like the way my team's built, even with Diggs going down. It's next man up. I went out, I got Mike Evans. He is hopefully coming back for that playoff run. But I mean, I got good running backs. That's something I haven't had in years past. I really like where my quarterbacks are at with Kyler Murray and Sam Darnold. Love my receivers, and then I kind of fell ass backwards into having like the best and the only reliable tight end in the league so far this season with George Kittle. So I just love the way my team's built, and I think that the results the last few weeks, and I talked about it on the last power rankings where that first month I kind of blew it myself. It was I easily could have had a 3-1, 4-0 record. I managed myself out of so many wins, but I've started to get those wins back. I've started to make up for all those lost points. I'm starting to close that gap on my max points for, and starting to set those efficient lineups. So I love where my team's at. I think 3 is a great ranking. That's like monumental for this franchise. Um, I don't know. It feels like we're at least in agreement that I'm here at this point. I don't know, Amaral. Do you have me ranked at 3? Do you have me ranked lower?
Well, I think I thought I could have had you in the same tier with Bowen and George. Um, but just like when you were, as far as tiers go, when you were saying Steady Eddie, like I think the Steady Eddie is the Kit Kat. So even if I don't necessarily believe that
Listen,
your
I'll
words,
make the swap now. I'll make them the Twix. I'll make them the Kit Kat. Like I said, I think
that's where
very
I was
highly
going
of
with
the Kit.
that.
I'm the
Yeah.
Kit Kat guy. I mean, I'm the guy. I open that shit up. I bite right into it. I don't even bother breaking that shit off. That's just like my thing. So I mean, if we want to switch it, make them a Twix, make them a Snickers, and then make me a Kit Kat. I mean, I would love to do that. I don't know if you guys have one, if you guys have the Kit Kat tiered that high, if you think that that's too big of a compliment, but. I mean, I do agree. I do think that from if we're making a one-to-one comparison like that, we're trying to be maybe a little more on the nose with what the candies are. I do think that Kit Kat is very fair.
I'm willing to give you the sole, naming rights of your tier. I think this is really a chance to just be as creative as you want with it. So I'm cool if you arrive at that conclusion. I think we're talking about quality candies across the board. So you really can't go wrong.
Listen, I'll give them. What do we think? Twix or Snickers?
I think Twix is pretty fucking elite,
I love
and
the Twix. I love
so
the.
I'd say Snickers. Snickers is almost,
I
you
agree.
know,
Yeah, I think if
almost
you were
irrelevant.
flip-flopped, I think a Twix has to be above a Kit Kat.
Yeah, I
So
think that's fair.
Snickers, I guess is
Yep.
yeah.
All right, I'll be the Kit Kat. I don't know. You guys got any more thoughts on my team before we get into the final two? Walls, how do you feel? I mean, I think I'm 2 games back in the division, but you have big brain on your heels record wise. I'm obviously making a big push when it comes to the points, and I did win 3 of my last 4 games, so we got plenty of games where I could make up that gap as well. How are you feeling? I mean, I've been competing in the division really since you've gotten here into this league, so. What are your thoughts on my team?
I think I thank God every day that you decided to start Greg Dulcich over George Kittle in that week against me.
I
That was
defend the read. He got 8 targets. Greg Dulcich got 8 targets that game. I defend the
I
read.
watched some of it and like because it was like it was like the 4 o'clock games or whatever, and like they were feeding him targets. You're right. He looked fucking terrible. Like he
Oh, he was
dropped
terrible.
like
He basically
egregious.
hasn't played since.
Yeah, he was terrible. Like I couldn't. I was just dying, and I'm like, wow, like whoever thought he was going to be good, and then I like look and I'm like, I'm playing against him. Like Kittle's on his bench, and so that was very funny. But going back to your team, I mean, I think when I was looking at your team before the season, like I always thought it was a good team, a solid team, but I felt like you were missing that high end talent, like that high end, like top five fantasy performer. But Mixon has been that. Like Mixon has been a fucking
Unbelievable.
monster. Like I don't know if he can continue to run this hot because like that's crazy, but he hasn't shown any signs to think that wouldn't be the case. So with him being like a surefire top five running back, and then you have a stable of RB2s, and I think you're definitely deeper than even obviously my team and Pete's team. So that's like kind of where if there are just a shitload of injuries, you'll probably be even better for it. So I think this is a very fair ranking. I do think that the higher end talent of like that crazy, week winning upside of me and Pete just kind of separates us from you. But I think you're well deserved to be at 3 because that's where I had you before this.
Yeah, like I don't have like a CeeDee Lamb like Pete has, or I mean, you're getting your Tyreek Hill back or Nico Collins. I mean, Drake London, I think has been the
Yeah.
most pleasant surprise for me, where it's kind of been what we were all what any Drake London owner was hoping for, and I think what a lot of people expected when Kirk Cousins signed. But he really did break out, and he's been a top 10, top 5 receiver for me for most of the season. So getting that, and then like you said, Mixon has just been exceeding expectations. He's been unbelievable every single game that he started and finished. And then George Kittle just being a consistent tight end one. And, in years past, he's kind of been a guy where he's been laying low for most weeks, but then he gets you those 20, 30 point weeks where he truly wins you that week. But he's been a lot more consistent this year. And I think that's kind of been the key for me as well. Just having, 10 to 15 points in my starting lineup in that spot every week has been so huge. But yeah, I mean, with Mixon, of course, you get into that territory where it just feels like, here's the game where he gets like 3 points or something like that. And I do get a little worried as they're starting to lose more and more weapons in that offense, and we'll see, how they can perform. But with Nico Collins coming back, in the next week or two, it should be. I think they're going to be all right. But yeah, I love the amount of volume he's getting. Chuba Hubbard getting so much volume. Brian Robinson's been great, and Tony Pollard was a guy that Simcoe hated him last year, and I get it. I mean, Tony Pollard was such a disappointment last year, but he's been a huge addition for me. So being able to have those running backs, I've been starting 4 running backs a bunch. That's been very helpful to me. And listen, I got to shout out my guy Elijah Moore. All right, I traded for him. I made a big trade from years ago. It was always he always had the separation stats. He was always like the most open receiver ever. Never had the stats to back it up. Uh, you might find this might actually be the best quarterback situation of his career. It's Jameis Winston on his like what third or fourth team. So I mean, he's finally getting those targets. He's finally starting to break out a little bit. He's starting to look pretty good. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I love the depth that my team has, and I mean, I'm definitely going to be exploring some options around the deadline. I feel like I have a ton of depth. I'll see, maybe I can cash in on something, try and get that player, like I said, that I don't have. We'll see if I can get myself maybe a league winner like that. But at the same time, I think I have a few league winners on my team as well. And, kind of falling into DeAndre Hopkins being maybe the Chiefs wide receiver one as they make a playoff push. That would be massive wall. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's not really too much discussion to have about my team's ranking, but hey, I just wanted to gloat a little bit. My team hasn't been in this position in pretty much at any point in this league's history, so I'm feeling good. But all right, let's
You
move
might
on
have
to the
lost me
top.
at the Elijah Moore resurgence. I don't know if I can get behind that, but everything else I support
Had to
wholeheartedly.
shout my guy. I mean, listen, when you're banging the drum for Nico Collins for 2 years, you have him nicknamed the Chosen One. He was your guy. You drafted him in the startup draft, and then you trade him just because you needed to clear some room before the season started, and you traded him for pennies. I mean, you got to take the wins where you can get them, and I feel like I'm at least starting to get a little bit of my money back from that Elijah Moore trade. So I gotta at least talk about that
You
one.
gave away
And I
Sky
mean, the fact
Moore.
he has looked really good the last 2 weeks. I just got to give him credit.
Yeah, no, Sky Moore. I mean, that was the player you. Right? We just can't bring up the picks. That'll be tough to equal that value out. But
What was
yeah,
that? What was that? A 25 pick? So I guess we haven't seen it yet. Is that what it was?
I think that was like I thought it was an earlier pick, and that was like the main leverage I used to then get Tyreek back. So it is that Elijah Moore trade has shaped my team into where it's at for sure. But who knows, man? If this is the Elijah Moore breakout, I mean, you can't it's not over till the fat lady sings, right? So
I'll
there's
say
still time
trust
left.
the Trinity. If you know, you know.
Yep.
That's all
Yep.
I'll say. All right.
And on the theme of Browns receivers, it like makes me physically ill that Cedric Tillman's now breaking out. Like Kieran, we talked about this like because you are like
Love
a
them at Tennessee.
yes, you're like a super Josh Heupel Tennessee guy.
Yeah.
So like on that team with Hendon Hooker, like I thought he was clearly the better receiver than Jalen Hyatt.
No,
Uh,
yeah, like as far as just being like a pro-ready receiver, he definitely was. And
I,
because he was a guy, his stats weren't crazy and it didn't feel like he was like benefiting from Heupel's system. And I feel like I mean, that's kind of like Nico Collins in Michigan as well, where they were so run heavy and he didn't put up crazy stats, but like his measurables were just so good that it's like, I mean, hey, like if this guy does get those targets, and it does feel like that Amari Cooper trade was because they wanted to kind of get him into that role, and Cedric Tillman couldn't really break through anywhere else unless Amari Cooper was gone. So he's starting to get those looks. Elijah Moore is getting some really good looks out of the slot, and then Jerry Jeudy, despite getting traded and then getting that contract, which I mean, in hindsight, it really wasn't that big of a contract to begin with, but it just feels like he sucks. I think Jerry Jeudy just maybe kind of
yeah.
sucks. But all right. These last two teams, I think they're in the same tier. So I mean, I guess if we want to try and argue it, I mean, I'm going to say, I think it's Pete then Wallace one. I think we just have to respect Wallace's ranking. He is number one. Pete, of course, did just have that insane. That was not he didn't set the record, did he? I think he still fell a few points short. But he put up 190 points. I mean, you do that type of shit. I mean, that's when you know you have a really good team. Um, I'll start with him. I mean, yeah, I mean, he went 4-0 over the last month. He's making a push for that division. It feels like he has got the momentum on his side as well. It wouldn't shock me to see him be a top three seed when we do the power rankings next. He has the most points in that last month. He had the most points for. He's 170 points above seventh place. Anthony Richardson getting benched is not a big deal at all. He has Flacco. He has Stafford. I think the only real concern, if I have a knock on his team, it's still, if he has those injuries, his team is in a bad spot. He got Puka Nacua back. But it's like even, especially at running back, Devin Singletary, he's starting to lose touches to Tyrone Tracy. That was like all he had for running back depth. So, there is still that concern in the back of my mind. But I mean, when we're talking about how they played in the last month, there really hasn't been a team better than Slippery Pete. So I put him at second, but I still have to respect the fact that Wallace is in first place and is the number one overall seed. Wallace, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, it's coming off the heels of having a really awesome week in which I put up the second most points in the league, 140, and I still lost to Pete by 50 points. I understand, and he also has more points for than me on the season. So I'm completely cool with having Pete at one and me at two. That's no problem. I was just going to bang the drum that I'm like, you can't. I need to be in that top tier. That's where I was going to kind of put my foot down, and because I think I was just again looking at it through the lens of like I honestly I still like my roster more than Pete's. I think I would still much rather have my roster rest of season, just because my team, who knows, injuries always happen, but I haven't seen my team at full strength. With Tua playing quarterback for the Dolphins receivers, not having Nico Collins this past week. But I think once I plug in Nico and I plug in Tyreek, Kate Otten has been outstanding ever since there's been just all the Tampa receivers have gotten wiped out and suddenly looks like a top five tight end. So I feel like when I'm comparing my team to Pete's, they're very similar. I'm
You still
missing,
have Hawkinson, right?
yeah, I have
Yeah, and he's
Hawkinson,
coming back.
Ferguson, yep, Otten. So I like my tight end room a little bit more than Pete's. I like my depth really across the board a little bit more than Pete's. I like my running back room a little bit more. I think the only thing my team is lacking is that what he has in Jalen Hurts, and that's like an overall like QB1 upside each week because he's just an average quarterback that turns his body into a battering ram around the goal line, but that is enough to separate him from the rest of the pack. So it's really close. But I think where it makes sense for the sake of this exercise, I'm cool with Pete at one, me at two, as long as we're in that top tier. And we'll see if that ends up being a matchup in the playoffs down the road. There's a lot of season left. So
I mean, I had you at one. I had you at one. I mean, despite going 1-3, you were still the one seed. That was something we talked about at the beginning of the episode. But I mean, you got the second most points. You got the most points for, and you had the fourth most points for over the last month. So it's like, I mean, you're still one of the strongest teams, whether you're looking at the full season, whether you're looking at recently, despite that record. So, I mean, that's where I had you at one. I mean, you are still one seed. If Pete wants to overtake Bowen in that division, then he can get the one seed. But until then, I mean, I got to give it to the team that's currently in a position to get a first round bye. Amro, how did you have this?
So I'll say as of right now, I have Pete 1, Wallace 2. With that said, like after we do this after week 12 and Wallace has presumably a fully healthy team with Nico Collins back and Tua still throwing the ball, I think that will flip-flop. But I will say as of right now, with Pete having his guys back, Jonathan Taylor back from the ankle injury, Puka back from the knee injury, I think as of right now I have Pete number 1, Wallace 2.
All
Fair
right. I
point.
mean, I think it's fair. I mean, I feel like we'll go in that order then. It feels like it's kind of a 2-1 thing. So we'll go Pete here. We'll go Wallace here. I don't think that there's too much more to say on these teams. So I guess we can focus on this tier name. What do we say? Are we in agreement that Reese's is the number one?
I think so. Yeah.
It has to be. I think there's other candies that I prefer maybe slightly more. Like I just love a Take Five. I just think that that is just so fucking slept on. But at the same time, when we're talking about like the top tier, it needs to also be universally accepted as the best, and that is Reese's. There's no
100%.
doubt.
I mean, and I got to throw my hat in the ring for the Reese's Fast Break. Best candy bar I've ever had in my life.
Oh, fast race are amazing.
Yeah, I
Fast
mean
breaks are
those are the best.
great.
I used to in high school. I used to always say that they were like protein bars, basically. So I would just have them after like track meets and shit like that. They're delicious. They're unbelievable. But yeah, I've gotten to like I said, my candy bowl now. I got the Reese's Take Five. So good, so good. I mean, I have like the fun size ones. I just take those down in one bite, no problem.
I would say, do you guys ever have like the fast breaks were good, but Reese's also used to make this like nutrageous bar that was
Oh yeah.
Oh
basically
yeah.
just a top five, a take five with extra peanuts on top, which just to give it that extra crunch. And I was like, that one is up there too. So you really can't go wrong with either one.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, yeah, we'll keep it Reese's there. So we got Reese's Kit Kat, Snickers, Butterfingers, Three Musketeers, candy corn, and black licorice. Those are the rankings. I don't know if you guys have any closing thoughts, but we can just leave it at that. Thank you to our sponsors. These are the Power Rankings 2.0. We will be back. I will be back in 2 weeks. We will be back with more Power Rankings in a month. That'll be a very interesting one with the playoff push. That'll be post deadline, everything like that. But don't forget trade deadline in 2 weeks. We will see you then. All right.
Sweet. Good stuff, fellas.
All right, boys. We get just in time to watch the Dodgers